You should be grateful, they told me. That's the phrase that keeps ringing in my ears. Grateful. As if I were a stray cat they had graciously allowed to sleep on the porch rather than the woman who paid for the roof over their heads. Before we find out what happened, please subscribe to the channel and let us know which city you are listening from in the comments. My name is Louise Paget, and for 35 years I didn't just work, I ran the show. I wasn't just a nurse who fluffed pillows and handed out Jell-O cups. I was the head nurse of a trauma unit in downtown Chicago. When a 20-car pileup flooded the ER, I was the one deciding who saw a doctor and who had to wait. I managed the schedules of 50 exhausted staff members. I balanced the payroll when the hospital administrators messed it up. I dealt with life, death, and the mountains of paperwork that come with both. You don't survive 3 decades in that job by being soft, and you certainly don't survive it by being stupid. So, when I retired 2 years ago, I thought I had earned a little peace. I had played the game of life and won. My husband, heavy rest his soul, had passed on, but he left me secure. We paid off the mortgage on our 4-bedroom house back in 2010. I have a pension that brings in $4,500 a month, regular as clockwork. I don't owe a dime to anyone. I thought that was enough. I thought I was enough. But grief is a tricky thing. It doesn't make you stupid, but it does make you tired. After the funeral, the silence in the house was heavy. I managed the bills, the groceries, and the maintenance just fine, but I did it with a heaviness in my chest. That's when my son, Bradley, and his wife, Jessica, started coming around more often. At first, I was happy to see them. I thought they were coming to check on me because they loved me. I made them pot roast on Sundays. I slipped a little cash into my grandson's birthday cards. I thought we were a family pulling together. I didn't see the sharks circling because they were smiling the whole time. It started small, subtle little comments that chipped away at my confidence. "Mom, did you forget to lock the back door again?" Bradley asked one afternoon. I frowned. "I never leave it unlocked, Bradley. You know that." Okay, he said, holding up his hands in mock surrender. "I just found it open. That's all. Maybe it slipped your mind. You have been through a lot lately." He said it so gently, with such concern in his eyes, that I actually checked the lock 3 times that night. Then it was Jessica. We were sitting in the kitchen having coffee, and she noticed a stack of mail on the counter. "Oh, Louise, look at all this," she sighed, picking up a utility bill. "It must be so overwhelming to keep track of all these due dates. My mom missed a payment last month, and they almost shut her power off. The late fees were astronomical. I have a system, Jessica," I said, though I felt a twinge of defensiveness. "I write everything on the calendar." "Of course you do," she said, patting my hand like I was a toddler who had drawn a nice picture. "But systems fail, especially when we get a bit older. Everything is digital now, Louise. Paper trails are so messy. You don't want to accidentally lose your credit rating because a letter got lost in a pile, do you? They planted the seeds day by day. You're tired. You're forgetting things. The world is too fast for you. We just want to help." The breaking point of my resistance wasn't a big explosion. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was staring at a bank statement that looked different than usual. The bank had updated their layout, changing where the transaction codes were. The font was smaller. The columns didn't line up the way I was used to. I had a headache behind my eyes that wouldn't go away, and for a split second, I just wanted someone else to deal with it. I wanted to just be a grandmother, not a manager. Bradley happened to walk in right at that moment. He saw me rubbing my temples, the paper shaking slightly in my hand. "Rough day with the numbers, Mom?" he asked. "They changed the format," I muttered, putting the paper down. "I can't find the deduction for the property tax." He sat down next to me, sliding the paper over. Jessica and I could handle this for you. Just the technical stuff. We can set it up online. So you never have to squint at these papers again. You've worked hard your whole life, Mom. Why are you still stressing over paperwork? Let us carry the load for a while. I looked at him. He was my son. I wiped his nose when he was 3. I paid for his college when he was 18. Why shouldn't I trust him? I don't want to be a burden, I said softly. You're not a burden, he smiled. You're family. We just want you to relax. If I had known that relaxing would cost me my dignity, I would have burned that bank statement right there on the table. But I didn't know. I was tired, and I trusted them. All right, I said, pushing the paper toward him. Maybe you're right. And just like that, I opened the door and invited the wolves in. For the first few weeks, it felt like a vacation. I stopped checking the mailbox with that knot of anxiety in my stomach. I stopped waking up at 3 a.m. wondering if I had remembered to transfer money to the savings account. Bradley and Jessica would come over on Sundays, and instead of talking about bills or repairs, we just talked. It felt nice. It felt like I had my son back, not just a handyman I called when things broke. But looking back now, I see that the piece was just the bait. The trap was already closing around my ankles. The shift didn't happen overnight. It was a slow drip of doubt, carefully measured to make me question my own mind. It started with a water bill. I have paid the water bill on the 15th of every month for 40 years. It is automatic for me. But one Tuesday, Jessica walked into the kitchen holding a red envelope. "Oh, Louise," she said, her voice dripping with that sticky sweet concern. "This was in your pile. It's a disconnect notice." I froze. That's impossible. I wrote the check 2 weeks ago. "Well, maybe you wrote it but forgot to mail it," she suggested, tilting her head. "Or maybe you wrote the wrong amount. It happens, My aunt started doing that right before before she had to go into the home." My stomach dropped. I snatched the envelope from her. It was a past due notice, but the date on it didn't make sense. I went to my checkbook register to prove her wrong, but my hands were shaking so bad I couldn't read my own handwriting. "See," Bradley said, stepping up behind me and placing a heavy hand on my shoulder. "You're getting worked up. Your blood pressure can't take this, Mom. Let us handle it. We'll pay it online right now." I felt a flush of shame hot enough to burn my cheeks. I let them take the bill. I later found out the bill wasn't even late. It was a clerical error by the water company, but they never told me that. They let me believe I was losing my mind. That was the opening they needed for the big move. A week later, Bradley sat me down at the dining room table. He had a folder of documents and a serious look on his face. "Mom, the bank called," he lied. I know now it was a lie, because banks don't call you to give financial advice on a Saturday. They said the way your accounts are set up is risky. If something happens to you, God forbid, the accounts freeze. Jessica and I wouldn't be able to pay for your hospital bills or arrangements. We'd be locked out for months while the courts fight over it. "I have a will," I said, "and I can give you power of attorney." "Power of attorney is messy," Bradley said quickly, too quickly. "It requires lawyers, it expires, and half the banks don't even honor the old forms anymore. There's a better way. It's called joint ownership with rights of survivorship. It just means I'm on the account with you. I can't do anything without you knowing, but if there's an emergency, I can sign a check. It's for your safety." I hesitated. During my nursing years, I had seen families torn apart by money. But this was Bradley. This was the boy who used to mow lawns to buy me a Mother's Day gift. He wasn't a stranger. And after the water bill incident, I was terrified of making a mistake that would leave me in the dark. So I drove to the bank with them. I sat in the leather chair across from the personal banker, a young woman who looked at me over her glasses. Mrs. Paget. She asked, "Do you understand that by adding your son as a joint owner, you are giving him equal access to these funds? He can withdraw, transfer, or close the account without your further permission." I looked at Bradley. He smiled, that reassuring, confident smile. "It's just for emergencies." "Mom, you know that." "I understand. I told the banker. I signed the paper. I didn't sign a permission slip. I signed my life away. I didn't know it then. But legally, the money was no longer just mine. It was ours. And in their eyes, it was theirs. The physical takeover happened almost immediately after we left the bank. "Mom, give me your debit card," Bradley said as we got into the car. "I need the numbers on the back to set up the online banking app on my phone. That way, Jessica can monitor the bills for you." I handed it to him. He put it in his wallet. We drove home, and when he dropped me off, I asked for it back. "Oh, shoot, I left it in the center console," he said, tapping the steering wheel. "I'll bring it by tomorrow. You don't need it tonight, do you? You have plenty of food in the fridge." He didn't bring it back tomorrow, or the next day. When I asked about it a week later, Jessica laughed it off. "Louise, why do you need the card? We're doing the grocery shopping for you now, remember? It's safer this way. You hear about these scammers stealing card numbers at gas pumps every day. We're just protecting you." Then came the silence. I used to get paper statements in the mail every month. I liked opening them, reconciling the numbers, seeing my pension deposit hit. The next month, the mailbox was empty. "Where is my bank statement?" I asked Bradley on the phone. "We switched it to paperless, Mom," he said, sounding annoyed that I was even asking. "It saves trees, and it stops thieves from stealing your mail. It's all in the app. Can I see the app?" I asked. "Sure, next time I'm over." But he never showed me. And when I tried to log in on my old desktop computer, my password didn't work. I tried my birthday, my anniversary, the dog's name, nothing. I got a red error message. "Password incorrect. Account locked." I called Bradley in a panic. "I've been hacked. My password isn't working." "Calm down, Mom," he sighed. "You weren't hacked. We changed the password to something stronger. The old one was too easy to guess. Stop trying to log in, okay? You're going to lock us out, and then we won't be able to pay your electric bill. Just relax. We've got it covered." I hung up the phone and sat in my silent kitchen. I looked at the calendar where I used to write my bill dates. It was blank. I looked at my purse. The debit card slot was empty. I had $4,500 coming in every month, a lifetime of savings, and I couldn't even buy a gallon of milk without asking my son's permission. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was being paranoid. They were doing this for me. They were protecting me. But deep down, in the pit of my stomach, I knew the truth. I wasn't being protected. I was being erased. It had been 3 months since that shift. 3 months of asking for permission to buy groceries. 3 months of having to explain why I needed cash for a haircut. I felt like a teenager grounded by her parents. Except I was 72 years old and spending my own money. The breaking point arrived on a rainy Thursday in November. My grandson, Leo, Bradley, and Jessica's boy, was turning 10 the following week. Leo was a sweet boy, obsessed with space and rockets. I had been planning for months to get him a specific telescope set I had seen in a catalog. It was a serious piece of equipment, not a toy costing about $180. I knew he would love it. I knew it would be the kind of gift he'd remember when he was my age. I waited until Bradley and Jessica came over for their usual Thursday check-in, which was really just them raiding my pantry and checking if any mail had slipped through their digital blockade. They were sitting at my kitchen island. Jessica was scrolling through her phone, tapping away with perfectly manicured nails. Bradley was eating an apple he'd taken from my fruit bowl. Bradley, I started trying to keep my voice steady. Leo's birthday is coming up. We know, Mom, he said, crunching into the apple. We're having a party at the pizza place on Saturday. You're coming, right? Of course I'm coming. But I need to buy his gift. I want to get him that telescope set I told you about. It's at the hobby shop downtown. I paused, taking a breath. I need my debit card to go get it. The room went quiet. The tapping on Jessica's phone stopped, but she didn't look up. Bradley chewed slowly, swallowing before he spoke. A telescope? He asked, frowning. Mom, that sounds expensive. Does a 10-year-old really need that? He'll probably break it in a week. He won't break it. I insisted. He's a smart boy. And it's my money, Bradley. I want to spend it on my grandson. Jessica finally looked up. She let out a short, sharp laugh, like a bark. Louise, you really don't need to go all out. We got him a video game. He'll be fine with that. Besides, do you really want to drive all the way downtown in this weather? It's slippery out there. I am perfectly capable of driving to the hobby shop, I said, my voice rising just a notch. Please, just give me the card for the afternoon. I'll bring it right back with the receipt. Bradley sighed. It was a long, heavy sigh, the kind a parent gives a child who is begging for candy before dinner. He reached into his pocket. My heart leaped. I thought he was going to hand me the card. Instead, he pulled out his wallet and opened it. He thumbed past a stack of 20s and pulled out a single $50 bill. He placed it on the granite counter and slid it toward me with 2 fingers. We don't think you need to be spending hundreds on toys, Mom, he said calmly. It's not prudent. You're on a fixed income, remember? My fixed income is $4,500 a month, I said, staring at the bill. I have plenty of money, and we want to keep it that way. Jessica chimed in, going back to her phone. Retirement homes are expensive, Louise. We're saving for your future. Bradley tapped the $50 bill. Take this. Get him a nice book or maybe some socks. He needs socks. This should be enough for your little treats. Your little treats. The words hung in the air like smoke. My pension, money I earned working double shifts in the ER, money I saved by skipping vacations and cooking at home, was now an allowance, a little treat. I looked at the $50. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the apple at his head. But I knew that if I made a scene, they would just say I was being emotional or difficult. They would use it as proof that I was losing it. So I picked up the bill. My fingers felt numb. Thank you, I whispered. You're welcome, Bradley said, standing up. We're doing this for you, Mom. You'll thank us later. They left about 20 minutes later. I sat there for a long time, staring at the $50. I felt small. I felt erased. I felt like the Louise Paget who ran a trauma unit had died, leaving this hollow shell behind. I eventually got up to clean the kitchen. They had left a mess, as usual. Coffee cups on the table, apple core on the napkin. As I wiped down the counter where Jessica had been sitting, I saw something on the floor. It was a crumpled piece of white paper, near the bar stool. I almost swept it up, but something made me stop. I bent down, my knees popping in the quiet house, and picked it up. It was a receipt. I smoothed it out on the counter. It was from Lumina Salon and Spa. The timestamp was 1:15 p.m. that same day, just before they came to my house. I put on my reading glasses. Gel manicure. $45 deluxe pedicure. $60 highlight and cut. $95 total. $200. I stared at the bottom of the receipt. The last 4 digits of the card used were 8842. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew that number. I had memorized it years ago. That was my debit card. Jessica had spent $200 of my money on her nails and hair. 2 hours before sitting in my kitchen and telling me I couldn't afford a telescope for her son. She had sat there, tapping her freshly painted nails on her phone, while her husband handed me $50 and told me to buy socks. They weren't saving for my future. They were spending it on their present. The sadness that had been weighing me down evaporated instantly. In its place, a cold, hard clarity washed over me. It was the same feeling I used to get when a patient was crashing, the moment when the panic disappears and the training takes over. I looked at the $50 bill on the counter. Then I looked at the receipt. Little treats, I said aloud to the empty room. I wasn't a helpless old lady anymore. I was a woman who had just realized she was being robbed by the people she loved, and I knew exactly what I had to do. I didn't cry. I folded the receipt carefully and put it in my pocket. The time for asking was over. I didn't sleep that night. I laid in bed, listening to the rain tap against the window, my hand still clutching that crumpled receipt in my pocket. The anger wasn't a hot, flashing thing anymore. It had settled into something cold and heavy in my gut, like a stone. Bradley and Jessica had left hours ago, smug and satisfied with their $50 charity. They thought they had left behind a confused, grateful old woman. They had no idea they had just woken up the head nurse. When the sun finally came up on Friday morning, I waited. I knew their routine. Bradley dropped Leo off at school at 7:45, then met Jessica for coffee before they went to their respective jobs, though I was starting to wonder how much work they actually did. At 8 a.m. sharp, I watched from behind the living room curtains as Bradley's truck pulled out of the driveway. I waited another 5 minutes, just to be sure. Then I moved. I didn't shuffle. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight to the spare bedroom, down the hall. It used to be my sewing room. A few months ago, Bradley had convinced me to clear it out so he could have a home office when he came over to manage my affairs. "It's better to keep all the paperwork in one place, Mom," he had said. He had even installed a new lock on the door, claiming it was to keep the grandson from messing with important documents. They thought a lock would stop me. They forgot that I lived in this house for 40 years. I knew that the spare key to that door wasn't lost. It was taped to the top of the door frame. A habit my late husband had started in case we ever locked ourselves out. I reached up, my fingers brushing the dust, and found the small brass key. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room smelled like Bradley's cologne. It made my stomach turn. I sat down at the desk, my old oak desk, and looked at the mess. Papers were stacked everywhere. For people who claimed to be so organized and digital, they certainly loved paper. I started sifting. The top pile was innocent enough: utility bills, junk mail. But I dug deeper. I was looking for the truth. I opened the bottom drawer. It was stuffed with file folders. I flipped through them until I saw a red one labeled Accounts. I opened it, and the breath left my lungs. It was a printed bank statement from 2 days ago. They must have printed it out to review their spending. I ran my finger down the column of withdrawals. It was a bloodbath. October 12th. Best Buy, $1,200 October 15th. Cash withdrawal, $500 October 18th. Steakhouse 55, $340 October 22nd. Ticketmaster, $600. My hands started to shake, but I forced them to stop. Panic is useless. Data is power. I kept reading. They weren't just buying little treats for themselves. They were living a second life on my pension. They were eating at restaurants I couldn't afford, buying electronics I didn't need, and withdrawing cash like it was unlimited. And then I saw the balance. When I retired, I had a nest egg of $65,000 in my savings account, separate from my monthly pension. It was my emergency fund, my fix-the-roof fund, my what-if-I-get-sick fund. The statement showed a balance of $32,000. They had burned through nearly half of my life savings in 6 months. I felt sick. I wanted to close the folder and pretend I hadn't seen it. I wanted to go back to being the oblivious mother who trusted her son. But I couldn't, because then I saw the other paper. It was underneath the bank statement, clipped to a glossy brochure. The brochure was for a company called Lakeside Marine. On the cover was a picture of a gleaming white boat, a 20-foot bar with leather seats. It was beautiful. It was expensive. I pulled the paper out. It was a purchase agreement. Buyer, Bradley Paget co-buyer. Jessica Paget item. 2024 Sea Ray SPX total price. $48,000 down payment required. $25,000. I stared at the numbers. $25,000. My eyes scanned down to the bottom of the page. There was a sticky note attached to the contract in Jessica's handwriting. Closing appointment, Friday, December 12th at 2 p.m. Bring cashier's check. I looked at the calendar on the wall. Today was Friday, December 12th. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. It was 8:30 a.m. They weren't just skimming off the top anymore. They were going for the kill. At 2 p.m. today, in less than 6 hours, they were going to walk into my bank, withdraw $25,000 from my savings, and buy a boat. They were going to drain me dry. If they took that money, I would have almost nothing left. My security, my independence, my ability to take care of myself. It would all be gone, traded for a fiberglass toy they would use on weekends while I sat at home eating toast. The realization hit me harder than any physical blow. This wasn't just greed. This was disdain. You don't do this to someone you respect. You don't do this to someone you love. You do this to someone you view as a resource, a piggy bank waiting to be smashed open. I stood up. My legs felt surprisingly steady. The shock had passed, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. It was the same focus I had when a code blue alarm went off in the ward. The emotions, the hurt, the betrayal, the sadness. I boxed them up and shoved them into the back of my mind. I didn't have time to be a mother today. I had to be a survivor. I took out my phone and took photos of the bank statement and the boat contract. I needed proof. Then I carefully put everything back exactly as I had found it. The red folder in the bottom drawer, the papers stacked on top. I locked the door and replaced the key on the frame. I walked to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. I forced myself to drink it, even though my throat was tight. I needed the caffeine. I needed to think. I had 6 hours. They thought they had control. They thought that because they had the passwords and the debit cards, they owned the money. They thought that because I was 72, I was helpless. But they had made a mistake. They had forgotten that joint owner works both ways. They had forgotten that before I was a retiree, I was the woman who handled the toughest jobs in the hospital. And most importantly, they had forgotten that I was the one who taught them how to walk. I looked at the clock. 8:45 a.m. The bank opened at 9. I wasn't going to call them. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to ask them to explain. I was going to the bank. And I was going to get there before they did. I didn't drive my own car. That was the first decision I made. Bradley knew my car. He knew the license plate, and for all I knew, he had put a tracker on it for my safety. I wasn't taking any chances. I called a taxi service I hadn't used in years. When the yellow cab pulled up to the curb, I didn't walk out the front door, where the neighbors might see. I went out the side door, slipping through the garage, clutching my purse like it contained the nuclear codes. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked. "First National Bank," I said, "but not the one on Main Street. Take me to the branch on the north side, near the highway." The Main Street branch was where we had gone to set up the joint account. The tellers there knew Bradley. They knew Jessica. If I walked in there alone and started moving money, someone might make a courtesy call to my son to let him know his mother was acting strange. I needed a stranger. The ride took 20 minutes. I spent every second of it checking my watch. 9:20 a.m. I had hours before their 2 p.m. appointment at the boat dealership, but my heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I forced myself to breathe. In, out. In, out. I had managed 4 lines in moving ambulances. I could handle a bank teller. I walked into the branch. It was quiet, smelling of stale coffee and carpet cleaner. I walked straight to the desk of a personal banker, a middle-aged man with a nameplate that read, Mr. Henderson. "How can I help you today, Mrs. Paget?" I said, sitting down and placing my ID and the debit card, the one I had reported lost and requested a replacement for weeks ago without telling them, on the desk. "I need to make some significant changes to my accounts today, Mr. Henderson, and I need to do it quickly." He typed my name into his computer. "I see you have a checking and a savings account here, joint with a Bradley Paget." "That is correct," I said. "I am the primary account holder, and he is the joint owner. I understand that as a joint owner, I have full rights to access, withdraw, or close these accounts without the other owner's permission. Is that correct?" He nodded slowly. "That is correct, ma'am. Joint tenancy with rights of survivorship allows either party to act fully on the account." "Good," I said. "I would like to open a new account. A private, individual checking account. Sole ownership. No joint access. No beneficiaries listed at this time." He started the paperwork. It took 15 minutes of typing and signing. I read every document twice. I wasn't signing anything blindly ever again. "The new account is open," Mr. Henderson said finally. "How would you like to fund it?" "I want to transfer funds from the joint savings and the joint checking," I said. I sat up straighter. "I want to transfer everything." He paused, his hand hovering over the mouse. "Everything, ma'am? You want to close the joint accounts?" "No," I said. "Do not close them. If you close them, it sends a notification to the other owner immediately. I don't want that." I leaned in closer. "I want you to transfer exactly $31,950. Leave exactly $50 in the checking account." Mr. Henderson looked at me over his glasses. He looked at the balance on the screen, then back at me. He didn't ask why. He was a banker. He had probably seen divorces and family feuds play out across this desk 1,000 times. $50 remaining, he repeated. "Very well. And Mr. Henderson," I added, "this is the most important part. I need you to disable the overdraft protection on the joint account. Completely turn it off." "Are you sure?" he asked. "If a charge comes through that is larger than the $50 balance, it will be declined immediately. The bank won't cover it." "I am sure," I said. "That is exactly what I want. If anyone tries to spend $51, I want that card to decline." I watched him click the mouse. Click. The money moved. Click. The overdraft was disabled. In a matter of seconds, the $32,000 that Bradley and Jessica were planning to use for their boat down payment vanished from their reach. It was safe in my new account, under a new number that only I knew. "Is there anything else?" Mr. Henderson asked, handing me my receipt. "Yes," I said. "I need a new debit card for my private account, and I need you to block my online banking access for the next 24 hours. Say it's a security reset, if anyone asks." I walked out of the bank 10 minutes later. The sky was still gray, but the air felt lighter. I felt lighter. I took the taxi back to a coffee shop a few blocks from my house and walked the rest of the way, checking to make sure Bradley's truck wasn't in the driveway. It was empty. I let myself in, hung up my coat, and destroyed the taxi receipt. Then I set the stage. I went into the bathroom and splashed water on my face. I didn't put on makeup. I put on my old bathrobe, the one with the frayed collar that Jessica always said made me look ancient. I went to the kitchen, made a cup of tea, and sat in the living room with the lights off, just waiting. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Jessica. "Louise," she sounded rushed. "Bradley and I are grabbing lunch near the dealership. We were going to swing by and pick you up so you can be part of the surprise we told you about. The boat. They wanted me there to watch them spend my money." "Oh, Jessica," I said, making my voice sound thin and scratchy. "I don't think I can make it. I've had this terrible migraine since you left. I'm just lying here in the dark." "Seriously?" She didn't sound concerned. She sounded annoyed. "It's kind of a big day, Louise." "I know, I'm sorry," I said. "I just need to rest my eyes. You two go ahead. Have fun." "Fine," she huffed. "We'll come by afterwards to show you pictures. Bye." She hung up. I sat back in the recliner and took a sip of my tea. It was the best cup of tea I had ever tasted. They were at lunch. They were celebrating. They were probably drinking champagne, toasting to their new boat, to their cleverness, to the easy money they had siphoned from the old lady. I looked at the clock. 12:15 p.m. They had less than 2 hours until they tried to swipe that card. They were walking into a buzzsaw, and I was just sitting here waiting for the sound. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the one holding the remote control, and I was going to enjoy the show. The house was quiet. It was the kind of deep, heavy silence you only get when the television is off and the appliances aren't running. I sat in my recliner with a fresh cup of tea, steam rising in a thin, gray ribbon. I wasn't reading. I wasn't knitting. I was just watching the clock on the mantel. It was 1:55 p.m. 5 miles away, at Lakeside Marine. I knew exactly what was happening. I could picture it as clearly as if I were watching a movie. Bradley and Jessica would be pulling into the lot right about now. They wouldn't park in the back. Bradley would park his truck right up front, taking up 2 spaces, eager to show that he was a man of means. A man about to buy a $48,000 boat. They would be walking into the showroom, the smell of fiberglass and money in the air. Jessica would be wearing her big sunglasses, acting bored but secretly thrilled. Bradley would be shaking the salesman's hand, probably gripping it a little too hard, acting like a big shot. I took a sip of tea. It was Earl Grey, smooth, calming. At 2 p.m., the salesman, let's call him Gary, would be sitting them down at his glass desk. He'd have the paperwork fanned out. The C-Ray brochure would be right there. They would sign the papers with a flourish. They wouldn't even read the fine print. They never did. They just wanted the keys. "All right, folks," Gary would say, tapping the payment terminal. "We just need that down payment to finalize everything. $25,000 as discussed." This was the moment. Back in my living room, the grandfather clock chimed the hour. Bong, bong. At the dealership, Bradley would be pulling out his wallet. He wouldn't be nervous. Why would he be? For 6 months, that card had been a magic wand. He waved it, and gas went into his tank. He waved it, and steaks appeared on his table. He waved it, and my money became his money. He would slide the card into the chip reader with a smirk. "It's a big purchase," he'd probably tell the salesman, laughing. "Hope your machine can handle it." He would wait. Jessica would be looking at her phone, mentally picking out cushions for the boat deck. Transaction declined. I imagine the look on Bradley's face. A flicker of confusion. Not panic yet, just annoyance. "Must be the chip," he'd say. "It's a new card. Just run it again." The salesman would smile politely, reset the machine, and ask him to insert it again. Bradley would shove it in harder this time, tapping his foot. "Declined." "That's ridiculous," Bradley would snap. I knew his temper. When things didn't go his way, he got loud. There is over $30,000 in that account. I checked it myself 2 days ago. Your machine is broken. I can try entering the numbers manually, sir, the salesman would offer, his smile getting a little tight. Do that. And hurry up, we have a dinner reservation. They would try it manually. Declined. Insufficient funds. By now, 2:10 p.m., the atmosphere in that glass office would be changing. The salesman would be pulling the paperwork back, slightly. Other customers browsing the life jackets would be glancing over. Sir, the salesman would say, his voice dropping an octave. It's coming back as insufficient funds. Do you have another card? Or perhaps a cashier's check? I don't need another card. Bradley would yell, standing up. There is money in there. I'm calling the bank right now to straighten you people out. This was the part one had counted on. Bradley's arrogance. He wouldn't retreat. He wouldn't go outside to make a private call. He would want to prove the salesman wrong in front of everyone. He would want to prove he was the big man. I imagined him pulling out his phone, hitting the speed dial for the bank's priority line, a number he only had because my account was a preferred senior account. Speakerphone. I whispered to the empty room. Put it on speaker, Bradley. He would. He always did. He liked an audience. First National Bank. This is Sarah speaking. How can I help you? Yeah, this is Bradley Paget. He'd bark. I'm at a dealership trying to make a purchase, and your stupid system is declining my card. I'm a joint owner on the account. Fix it. Now. One moment, Mr. Paget. Let me pull up the records. The typing sound would echo through the small office. Jessica would be tapping her foot, looking around to see who was watching. Okay, Mr. Paget, Sarah would say, her voice crisp and professional. I see the account ending in 8842. I see the attempted charge for $25,000. Right. So push it through, Bradley would demand. I can't do that, sir, Sarah would reply. The transaction is being declined because the available balance in that account is $50. The silence in the dealership must have been deafening. $50? Bradley's voice would crack. That's impossible. There's $32,000 in there. Check the savings. The savings account associated with this profile has a zero balance. Sir, where is the money? Bradley would scream. We didn't spend it. Where did it go? And then the line that would end his world. Sir, Sarah said, calm as a cucumber. The funds were transferred out at 9:35 a.m. this morning by the primary account holder, Louise Paget. She moved the funds to a private account and disabled overdraft protection on the joint account. The $50 balance is accurate. The primary account holder, in front of the salesman, in front of the other customers, in front of his wife. The bank had just announced that his mother, the senile old woman he was taking care of, had cut him off at the knees. I took another sip of tea. It was still warm. I could see the color draining from Jessica's face. She realized it instantly. The migraine. The reason I stayed home. I wasn't sick. I was busy. That can't be right. Bradley would stammer, the fight draining out of him. She's at home. She's sick. The transfer was done in person at the North Branch, sir. Verified with ID. Is there anything else I can help you with? Bradley wouldn't answer. He would hang up the phone. The salesman, Gary, would reach across the desk and slowly slide the brochure for the C-ray out of Bradley's reach. Mr. Paget, Gary would say, his voice loud enough for the couple looking at kayaks to hear. I think we're done here. Please come back when you have the necessary funds. The walk of shame. They would have to stand up. They would have to walk past the boat they had already mentally named the Freedom. They would have to walk past the receptionist who had brought them coffee. They would have to walk out the double glass doors into the gray afternoon, knowing that everyone inside was whispering about them. They had walked in as wealthy boat owners. They were walking out as two broke con artists who had been outsmarted by a grandmother. I set my teacup down on the saucer. Clink. The clock struck 2:30 p.m. They would be in the truck now. Bradley would be slamming his hands against the steering wheel. Jessica would be screaming. They would be driving fast. They would be coming here. I stood up and smoothed the wrinkles from my bathrobe. I walked to the hallway mirror. I looked at myself. I didn't look like a victim. I didn't look like a little old lady. I looked like a woman who had just cleared a blocked airway. I went back to the living room and sat down. I picked up a magazine, Better Homes and Gardens, and opened it to a random page. I heard the tires screech in the driveway. I heard the car doors slam. I took a deep breath. The trap had snapped shut. Now, I just had to wait for the catch to come in and see what they had to say. I turned the page. I was ready. The front door didn't just open, it exploded inward. It hit the stopper with a crash that rattled the family photos in the hallway, followed immediately by the heavy, stomping boots of my son. "Mom!" Bradley screamed. It wasn't a greeting. It was a roar. I didn't jump. I didn't scramble to hide. I stayed exactly where I was in my leather recliner, my hands folded over the magazine in my lap. I watched them storm into the living room like a hurricane. Bradley's face was a color I had only ever seen on patients having a cardiac event, a deep, blotchy purple. Jessica was right behind him, her mascara smudged, looking less like a fashion plate and more like a cornered animal. "Where is it?" Bradley shouted, standing over me, his chest heaving. "What did you do?" "The bank said you moved the money. They humiliated us, Mom, in front of the whole dealership." "Lower your voice, Bradley," I said. My tone was conversational. The same voice I used to tell a doctor he was prescribing the wrong dosage. "I am sitting right here. I am not deaf." "Don't you tell me to lower my voice," he spat, pacing the rug. "You have no idea what you just did. We had a deal. We had the paperwork signed. Do you know how stupid we looked when that card declined? Do you? I imagine you looked quite foolish," I said calmly, "especially when they told you the balance was $50. Jessica stepped forward, her hands trembling. "Louise, this isn't a game. You're confused. You don't understand how banking works anymore. You probably pressed the wrong button or transferred it to some scammer. We need to fix this right now. Where is the money? Did you put it in cash? Did you hide it?" She was still doing it. Even now, with the evidence staring her in the face, she was trying to play the senile old lady card. She thought if she said it with enough conviction, I would believe her and hand over the keys. "I didn't send it to a scammer, Jessica," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "I moved it. I opened a private account this morning, an individual account. Just me." You can't do that," Bradley stammered, stopping his pacing. "I'm a joint owner. That money is ours." "Joint ownership with rights of survivorship." I corrected him. "I read the contract. Bradley, just like I read the boat contract you tried to hide in my sewing room. Either owner has full access. You used your access to drain my savings for 6 months. I used my access to take back what was left." The room went deadly silent. The air conditioner hummed. Bradley looked at Jessica, then back at me. The realization was finally hitting him. I wasn't confused. I knew about the boat. I knew everything. "We were doing that for you," Bradley lied, though his voice lacked the usual confidence. "That boat, it was an investment. For the family, for you to enjoy on weekends." "I get seasick, Bradley," I said dryly, "and I noticed my name wasn't on the title. Only yours and Jessica's." He ran a hand through his hair, desperate now. "Okay, look, maybe we rushed it. Maybe we should have talked to you first. I'm sorry, okay? But you can't just hoard that money. We have a deposit down. If we don't pay by 5 o'clock, we lose the boat and the holding fee. Just write us a check. We'll pay you back. I promise. Yeah, Louise, Jessica chimed in, trying to force a smile. We're family. Don't be spiteful. Just give us the card back, and we can forget this whole ugly afternoon happened. They were standing there, hands out, expecting me to fold. They expected the mother who cooked Sunday dinners and knitted sweaters. They expected the grandmother who just wanted everyone to get along. I reached down to my purse, which was sitting on the floor beside my chair. Bradley's eyes lit up. He thought I was reaching for the checkbook. He thought he had one. I opened the clasp. I didn't reach for the checkbook. I didn't reach for the new debit card. I reached into the small side pocket where I kept my loose cash. I pulled out the single, crisp $50 bill Bradley had handed me 2 months ago. The bill he had peeled off his roll of stolen money while his wife laughed at me. I stood up. My knees didn't crack. I walked over to the coffee table that stood between us. I smoothed the bill out on the wood, pressing it flat with my palm. Washington's face stared up at them. You need money for the boat? I asked. Yes, Mom, obviously. Bradley huffed. I tapped the $50 bill. Here, I said, this should be enough for your little treats. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a man. Bradley stared at the bill. His face went from purple to a ghostly white. He remembered the words. I saw the memory hit him, like a physical slap. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. He didn't see a resource. He saw me. That's not funny, he whispered. It wasn't funny when you said it to me, either. I replied. It wasn't funny when you told me I couldn't afford a telescope for your son, while your wife spent $200 of my money at a salon. I turned to Jessica. She flinched. I saw the receipt, Jessica. I saw the bank statements. I saw the restaurant bills. You haven't been managing my finances. You've been looting them. We have expenses. Jessica shrieked, dropping the act entirely. We have a lifestyle to maintain. You're sitting on all this money, doing nothing with it. You're old Louise. What do you need money for? You're just going to die anyway. The words hung in the air, ugly and raw. Bradley looked shocked that she had actually said it out loud, but he didn't correct her. That hurt more than the theft. He agreed with her. Get out, I said. What? Bradley blinked. I said get out. Not just of this room. Out of this house. You can't kick us out, Bradley scoffed, regaining a bit of his arrogance. We've been staying here 3 nights a week to take care of you. Our stuff is in the guest room. We have rights. You have no rights, I said, walking to the mantel and picking up a white envelope I had prepared while they were at the dealership. This is my house. The deed is in my name. The mortgage is paid by me. I handed him the envelope. This is a formal notice to vacate, I said. I printed it off the state legal aid website. You have 30 days to remove your clothing, your toiletries, and that ridiculous exercise machine you never use from my guest room. If you are not gone by January 12th, I will have the sheriff remove you for trespassing. Bradley held the paper like it was burning his fingers. Mom, you're evicting us? Over a boat. Over a misunderstanding. It's not about the boat, Bradley, I said, my voice finally wavering with the weight of the heartbreak. It's about the fact that you looked at your mother and saw a bank account. You took away my dignity for $50. I walked to the front door and opened it wide. The cold afternoon air rushed in. And one more thing, I said as they stood there, stunned and motionless. I have an appointment with my attorney on Monday morning. I'm updating my will. I suggest you start saving that allowance I just gave you. You're going to need it. Bradley looked at the $50 on the table, then at me. He didn't pick it up. He turned around, grabbed Jessica by the arm, and walked out the door. I watched them get into the truck. I watched them back out of the driveway. I watched them drive away. I closed the door and locked it. I slid the deadbolt home. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. The weeks following the reckoning were quieter than I expected, but it was a different kind of quiet. Before, the silence in my house felt like loneliness. Now, it felt like peace. It felt like freedom. Bradley and Jessica didn't give up immediately, of course. For the first few days, my phone buzzed constantly. There were long, rambling texts from Bradley about how family sticks together, and how they were just trying to help me invest. There were tearful voicemails from Jessica blaming the stress of her job for her behavior. They even sent Leo over with a handmade card that I suspected Jessica forced him to draw. I hugged my grandson, gave him a cookie, and sent him home. But I didn't answer the texts. I didn't return the calls. I had spent 35 years listening to people's excuses in the emergency room. I knew the difference between a mistake and a character flaw. What they did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. On Monday morning, just as I promised, I met with my attorney. It took about an hour to undo the damage they had tried to cause. I revoked the previous will. I set up a trust for Leo that he can access when he turns 25, skipping his parents entirely. Bradley and Jessica won't see a dime of the house, the savings, or the pension. My lawyer did the math for me. Between the value of my home, my investments, and my remaining life expectancy, Bradley and Jessica effectively threw away an inheritance worth over $500,000. They lost a fortune because they were too greedy to wait and too arrogant to respect me. They traded a lifetime of security for a boat they didn't even get to buy. A month later, I stood in the driveway. The winter sun was bright. I held my car keys in my hand. For 6 months, they had told me I was too old to drive. They said my reflexes were shot. They said the roads were too dangerous. I unlocked the door, sat in the driver's seat, and turned the ignition. The engine purred. I adjusted the mirror. I didn't feel confused. I didn't feel frail. I felt like Louise Paget. I drove to a little bistro downtown to meet two of my old nursing friends, Sarah and Martha. We ordered wine. We ordered the expensive salads. We laughed until our sides hurt about the good old days in the trauma unit. When the check came, Martha reached for her purse, but I was faster. I pulled out my new debit card, the one with my name and only my name on it. "I've got it," I said, handing it to the waiter. "Oh, Louise, you don't have to," Sarah protested. "I insist." I smiled. "I'm celebrating." "Celebrating what?" Martha asked. "My independence," I said. The waiter brought the receipt back. I signed it with a flourish. No permission asked. No text message sent to my son for approval. No $50 limit. It was a small moment, just paying for lunch, but it tasted sweeter than the wine. I drove home that afternoon, taking the scenic route. I thought about what Bradley had said that day in the kitchen. "You should be grateful." He was right in a way. I am grateful. I am grateful I found that receipt on the floor. I am grateful I walked into that sewing room. I am grateful that the fog of grief finally lifted enough for me to see the wolves sitting at my kitchen table. They wanted me to be grateful for the scraps they threw me from my own table. They wanted me to say, "Thank you for being treated like a child." But they forgot the most important lesson I taught them growing up. Gratitude is not a default setting. It is not owed to anyone, not even family. Gratitude is earned through respect, through kindness, and through love. They didn't earn it. So I took it back. I'm 72 years old. I have a paid-off house, a healthy bank account, and a whole lot of life left to live. And I plan to spend every single cent of it exactly how I please. Maybe I'll even buy myself a telescope. After all, I can afford the little treats. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.